That's iBookBinding's podcast, and we're recording our holiday special edition. I don't know what. So happy holidays, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and everything else that you can be celebrating on any dates in December or early January, because in Russia Christmas is on the 7th of January. In Armenia it's on the 6th, as far as I remember. So yeah, it's a long month, and happy holidays anyway. So I'm Stepan, as usual. I'm recording from Visay. Pavel, my co-host, is joining from Moscow. Then Mark Cockram joins us from the United Kingdom, and Richard Minsky joins us from the United States, from New York. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Nice to see you here. So, Mark, you sort of avoided the question.
Yes.
But we remember.
Yes, I have avoided the question.
Just can't choose. Just pick one.
What? I'm sorry, you're going to have to remind me of the question.
Okay. What's your biggest success in life? Please.
You're referring to the what's my biggest thing my biggest regret in bookbinding? It's an extraordinarily good question. I have many regrets, but I think if I were to have a singular big regret, would not be spending more time learning from other people, quite seriously. I was very fortunate when I went to college, and I had some superb teachers, and they were at the peak of what they were doing teaching wise. Again, a wealth of knowledge, a fountain of information. And when I left, I opened my own, when I graduated, I opened my own studio. And I somehow wish I could have had more time with them to learn more. But then that's history, and whatever, I am where I am now. I suppose I regret for the future is that if we are, in the UK at least, and it's something that Kate was talking about, and you mentioned as well, is that we don't have in the UK a pathway for people to learn bookbinding and book arts as well. I mean, not a staple 5 pieces of paper and the concept of the book, but serious book arts, good book arts. And there is some fantastic book arts out there. But in the UK, we don't have that. And that's my biggest regret, is that I should have fought harder to keep things open for people, because now we're in this situation where we're scrabbling around trying to get things started. And it's a real, that for me is my biggest regret, I suppose. That I'm not earning it, that I'm not earning enough, you know.
Are you optimistic about that? Because I think Kate is that sort of person who works a lot towards her goal, but doesn't really believe in achieving them sometimes.
I think if you work in art and design and the crafts or any creative discipline, you have to be optimistic as part of your personality, because you get so much rejection that you've got to keep fighting against it. It's not like working in an office where, you know, you're told what to do. I do this and I do that and I get my wage, right? On Saturday I can play golf. And then Sunday I go for a pub lunch, and then I start on Monday again. When you're working in art and design, when you're working with it 24 hours a day. It is your life. It is what you do. You dream your work. You every waking hour is your working. Everything you look at is inspiration for the next project and everything else. So you can't switch off. It's not like an accountant where you can actually, I know, and I have a couple of accountants who are acquaintances, and they say, yeah, I switch off. At Friday, 4:30 in the afternoon, switch off. That's it, bang, nothing. And then I can't do that. You can't do that. We can't do that. So you have to be a born optimist. You've got to be. Yes, I'm optimistic, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort for things to even get back to a shadow of what they were 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And we've got an awful lot of catching up to do. And it's also going to take a lot of brave people to take the plunge, as it were, to say, okay, we are prepared to finance this, you know, to get a venue, to put the equipment in it, to pay you, to make it work, so that we have a continuum, that we start up again. Because there are colleges, there are universities, there are courses that are churning out, and I do use the word churning out, paper conservators, restorers, bookrestorers, paper conservators, and all the rest of it. That's, yeah, because that's quantifiable. You know, you go in, you repair a piece of paper, look what I've done, that's wonderful. But when it comes to bookbinding and book arts, and especially book arts, it's like a lot of the arts, you can't quantify it. You know, is it good or is it bad? Well, it is what it is, and that's it. And this is why a lot of the arts are being dumbed down in education, especially in the UK, is because a lot of people's expectations for their children are, got to get a good job, you've got to get this, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, you know, bing, bang, bong, and everything else. You know, and it's not actually giving the younger people an opportunity to have a field where they can say, actually, I don't want to do that. I'm really interested in doing that. And I think with bookbinding and book arts, there is a resurgence. There is a groundswelling of interest in it, because we've gone through the ebook phenomenon. We've gone through all of this, and there is a greater understanding and for the book as it is. Book arts is a very interesting area, because good book arts is good art, and it's a good book. And it's like anything else. If it's bad book art, it's bad this, that, and the other. And you can, you know, and there are various stratas, not levels, not hierarchical stratas, but there's different sort of stratas that one can engage with it. And I think that if one elevates good book art, you know, good structure, not just 5 pieces of paper and a stapler and saying, oh, that's book art, it's the concept, but actually really doing something with it, then it will engage with younger people, because it's got that magic word, art. And it's, for me, that is a lead in to bookbinding, trade bookbinding, edition binding, fine bookbinding, designer bookbinding, creative contemporary bookbinding, and everything else. So I think we've got to lose a little bit of our snobbishness about the book, bring it back down and start engaging with a fresh new audience and making it mean something and making it valuable to them as a group, and also explaining what we do, as Kate said, as Richard does and everybody else, to a wider audience, so that they can actually understand its importance in today's society, tomorrow's society, and that sort of thing. And it's something we've got to do, but it's going to take a group of very brave people to say, okay, right, fine, we will do that. We're going to say, right, instead of doing media studies, we're going to say, right, fine, we're going to do the book, etc., etc. So I'm optimistic that it will happen, but I'm also a realist in knowing that it's going to take one hell of a lot of hard work, and it's going to be from a very small group of people who have the passion and the drive to be able to do it and take a risk with their own career and say, that's what I'm going to be doing. That's it.
Perhaps the way to go is to look internationally. We talked to Dimitris from who's originally from Greece, and he came
Dimitris
from
Koutsoupitzidis.
Thank you. That's what I want to say. Who originally came from Greece, and he came to the Royal Bindery to do his apprenticeship. So interest is out there, and luckily for UK, English is an international language. So,
unlike French.
I wasn't going to say that.
Sorry.
I read your blog posts, and so I'm up to date.
I'm just not very happy with how things
Well,
are
I think-
going here.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think I'm sure Richard. I hope Richard would agree with this. Is the language of making is universal. You know, doing that is the same in any language. Doing that is the same in any language. Putting that and that together to make this is the same in any language.
Peut-être, mais on a dit au e-bookbinding que les langues italiennes et espagnoles n'avons pas les mots pour certaines choses de la reliure
Oh,
ou de l'art livre.
hi, wakaru mas. No,
But-
it is, but it.
Окей, окей.
Я думаю, мы должны
but
переключиться
what-
на русский язык здесь, Паша, да?
Да, пожалуй, чего уж там, да. But what I meant, and I wasn't brave enough to say that neither UK nor US at the moment are that welcoming to people from other countries, whether they speak the language of making a book or not.
Well, that's politicians, that's not people.
How come those politicians are elected by those people?
Because politicians lie. They want to look after their jobs.
And most people are uneducated, and there you go. But,
Yeah.
but getting away from that element of society for a moment, from my perspective, it's very different for book art in the United States than it is in the UK. Here, there is a flourishing of it. There are several MFA programs in book art. There's MFA, dual program in book art and creative writing. They're putting all that stuff together where people learn to write and produce the whole and illustrate, to do the whole thing. There are several galleries that are continuing to put on new exhibitions of it that are specializing in book art. And there is a growing market, which is the more important question. Because we really don't need to produce more book artists. I mean, we have got tens of thousands. I look at this Facebook groups. There's like 11,000 people in the I Am a Bookbinder group, and there's like 60 or 70,000 people in the that other Facebook group with book
So
art.
it's like in the UK, we need more education. We need more book artists. We need to provide more education for book artists.
I don't know about that.
Stop,
I think we have more artists right now than we have market. So as an economist, I'm trying to make a balanced economy. We need more collectors is what we need, not more artists.
Now you've brought the point. Now I've just got to nip out for a few minutes, okay? Because I've had a couple of cups of coffee, if you get my drift, and I've just got to nip out just for a couple of minutes.
You nip out and slide down the chimney to the kids downstairs with your Santa Claus outfit.
If I've got to do what I'm going to be doing downstairs with the children, I will be locked up. I'm just going to do something elsewhere. Excuse me one moment.
Richard, so talking about collectors, I know you keep an eye on the field. What about the young people? Because in so many fields, the way forward was to generate interest in the younger generation, especially in those rich Silicon Valley kids.
Young people nowadays don't have money.
Richard, keep in mind that there are something like 2,000 billionaires in the world, and they have kids. And there are something in this country alone, there's something like 1 million millionaires. I mean, there's, it's not that kids don't have money. Poor kids don't have money. Rich kids have more money and have no limits on what they do. There's a great disparity. I have friends on, among the rich and the poor. I get to see a lot of the class structure, always have, and as an artist, you're often outside the class structure anyway. And when I was in the UK, it was so interesting because I got to hang out with like punks and kids in the street and stuff like that, and artists, and was invited to the Garter service, you know, where I was in my Huntsman's of Savile Row morning suit, you know. So you get to travel among a lot of different elements of society as an artist. And the kids, it really, I think, there is a huge variety of interests. You find kids among the rich and the poor who love book art and who can't stand the idea of art at all and have no interest, and I can't stand, just have no interest, whatever. I mean, you know, just let them go and just give them a surfboard, you know. And then I have friends who are like surfers who are artists, you know. I don't think there's any, you know, I'm not going to talk about the kids. It's great to bring in kids. When I say kids, first of all, I mean in their 20s, you know, bringing them in at the Center for Book Arts. So many of the people who are contributors today started out in their 20s or their 30s as students at the Center for Book Arts. And I would say most of the support that is not foundation, you know, kind of support, but, you know, voluntary contributions in the over $100 category come from people who came in and took a class, you know. And some of them have been, there are still people who 47 years later are still, you know, coming back and being supportive. And the amazing thing is that it survived for this long. I mean, it's almost 50 years ago when there was nothing like this, where there was no term book art. I mean, people forget, and well, you guys were born into a world where there already was book art. So you can't imagine what it was like when you're in a field that doesn't exist. And, you know, we talked about that, you know, you know, and it's really very different today.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, Richard, but I think we're a bit special in this way because we were born in the Soviet Union, and the things were a bit different in the Soviet Union. There were book arts of sorts, but yeah, it wasn't as easy. And you know,
the Soviet Union has a great history. If you go back to the futurists and the constructivist book art, in some sense, the way it is today.
But that's not just before our time. It is before our great parents' time. So so Stepan is right. Book art are very new to Russia.
How old are you guys?
I was born in 1982. Pavel is
and me in 1985.
A couple years.
So kids of the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boy, so you missed the 60s and the 70s as well as the. Okay, I'm a kid of the 40s.
Sorry.
I'm going to be 75 years old on the Russian Christmas.
I do miss them a lot. I think I would fit right in because my early 2000s were basically like your late 60s. I presume.
But I guess not like Soviet late 60s.
You spend your days stoned and tripping, you mean, in the 2000s.
And teaching higher mathematics. So,
well, that goes along with it.
Higher mathematics.
Once again, we're so lucky. We're so small that we do not get advertisements on YouTube, so we shouldn't care about all this stuff.
You can edit this. Remember, this is not live.
But the thing is about the Russian avant-garde.
No, we wouldn't edit anything out.
You look much better, Mark.
Yeah, they were the subversives. They were the pamphleteers, the subversives of their time. And that is something which is extraordinarily important. Because if you look about the work that they were doing, they were producing, let's say in the 20s and 30s, for example, they were actually treading a very, very fine line. And it's also about using the materials that were available. You know, okay, I've got a napkin, I'm going to use a napkin. I've got pink paper and green paper. Okay, that's going to work. That's all I've got. I'm going to use it. I've only got a nut and bolt to hold the pages together. That's what I'm going to use. And that is extraordinarily creative. And it's also this underground sort of gentle sweep of continuing, you know, the private sort of notion of the creative voice that was part of that, and that cannot be sort of overemphasized enough, I think. then, okay, in the 30s, then you've got, the major publications getting hold of it. You've got, photo montage work and all the rest of it. There are a number of publications out there that document this very, very well. But in the beginning, that nucleus, that little spark that's saying, actually, I want my own underground voice. I want my voice to be heard. I want my images and everything else. That is something else. And that is something that you can be extraordinarily proud of. That is your heritage with book arts, and that should not be
very
forgotten.
Much so. Yes, and I studied a lot, and I am very proud of it a lot. By the way, do you buy this thing about 2020s being in some promising to be something like what 1920s were?
The only reason the Roaring Twenties were called the Roaring Twenties is because that's what they were named after the decade, and that's basically it. I mean, okay, you've got the end of the First World War. You've got the Spanish influenza, etc., etc. What people seem to forget, in the middle of the 20s, you had the Wall Street crash, which the whole economy went down. So a lot of people were partying to forget what there was. And all you see, the majority of things you see on television and in the media and everything, are people, doing the Charleston, and they've got their little dresses on and the feather boas and like this and everything else, and cars and all this, that and the other. They're not looking at, other parts of the world, or even the UK, America, wherever, where there was terrible depression, there was starvation, there was all sorts of things happening. And again, it's the victors write the history. And I think with the 1920s, it was, okay. If you were rich and could afford it, it was a bloody great time to be around. But if you were like us, normal people, not so great. I mean,
I don't know if that's actually the economy of it. I think until it got to the late 20s, there was a time here, by the way, here, I have right here, I always keep this right here. See that? I don't know if you can see this flapper from 1929.
Yeah.
That's my mother at the age of 17.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So anyway,
I would like to say you've got a rise, but yours are a lot fresher.
I wanted to say that I don't mean Roaring 20s in terms of parties, because young people and rich people and artists will always have fun, whatever the circumstances.
Okay,
Well, more than that, you had the Model T Ford. You had the mass production of automobiles. So there was, for the common person, the ability for the first time, particularly for women, was because it was considered socially appropriate for women to drive cars, even going back to 1904, 1905, in the beginning of them. I have I had a whole section on women in cars in my first exhibition of publishers' bindings, and you really see society when you see the cover. I study society through the covers of books. And I have
that's the emasculation of women, and that was partly due to the First World War, where women were.
Is that emasculation or emasculation?
Well, when women went into the workplace, because the men were, doing other things and killing each other.
Well, this goes before that. This goes actually back to 1904. This goes back to the decade before the First World War. But the thing is, when I think of the Roaring 20s, I don't even think of what I really think about is the rise of fascism, and that's what I think it has to do with what's happening today.
It's interesting how you mentioned women getting cars and driver's license in the 1920s and later. It's interesting how it was different, very different in the Soviet Union, because when my grandmother got her driver's license at the same time as my grandfather in the late 1950s, and she was considered quite a rebel at that moment, because mostly men held a driver's license then at that time, and she drove until late 1980s, and then just stopped because my grandfather mostly drove, and she was okay with that. But still, throughout these Soviet years, she was considered a pretty unusual person a woman to have a driver's license in the Soviet Union. So
But then your great grandmother studied in Switzerland and was a pioneering medical scientist.
Yeah, and then she was one of the first female surgeons in the Imperial Russia, and yeah, she got her permission to be a surgeon from Nicholas II. So. Yeah,
you've kept that very quiet.
That's from my grandfather's side, not from my grandmother's side. She had some really interesting relatives as well, but that's on my grandfather's side.
I don't know. I look at I look around me and I see seeds for revolution in all sorts of ways. I mean, just think about it. Lots
you
of
mean
people,
in the modern world?
Yes. I mean, look around. We just had almost 2 years where people worked from home and nothing much broke. I mean, we have such a potential. We don't really have to go to work, most of us. And it gives so much time, so much space for art, for thinking, for writing.
At the same time, I read quite a lot about the fact that many couples had a lot of troubles living together in the same space throughout the pandemic. And
I don't know. For me, it was the happiest year ever.
For you, it was the happiest year ever?
I mean, 2020, not this one. Last year was amazing.
Well, yeah, because well, okay. So I was quite happy to be in with my wife at the same apartment 24/7 and spend a lot of time with her. But really, for many people, it was a trouble because people just don't know how to spend time together, and
it's time to learn.
It's time to learn. Yeah, okay. Boot camp.
I know. Now you'll finally know who you've been living with for so many years. Why not?
That's always quite interesting.
He's a Republican.
Okay.
No, but seriously, don't you think that that modern world has a potential for art revolutions? Because it's been a while since art has produced something really new. I mean, something that happened 100 years ago is still not palatable enough for people that they call it modern art. I mean, how something made 100 years ago can be modern art? It can't. But it is.
Modern is a period at this point that was, like from the modernism came in on book covers in the 1880s. I mean, it was more than 100 years ago. And modern is really pretty much 1880s to about 1935 is modern, art.
I see what happened here. Sorry, I need to explain
we're in a
myself.
postmodern world right now. I mean, not even now. End of the last century, we had the postmodern world. So I think
I'm sorry, Richard, I need to explain myself. In Russian, words modern and contemporary are the same. And when people say in Russian modern art, современное искусство, it means both art of that era and
like you were talking about rilegatore and the problems with Italian and Spanish with book art and bookbinding and the different aspects of it. And this what Mark, what you said earlier about the question of language. There it is again. But you know what I think? Nothing.
I think this is one of the things about art and the creativity. It is a continually moving, developing thing. It is. And it's only history that gives titles to periods or movements or whatever it is, unless of course you form a group and say, right, we're going to be foirists, futurists, we're going to be doing this, we're surrealists, whatever. But that fits into a time zone perhaps. And I think it's quite interesting because touching on something that Richard mentioned just before I had to go to nature, shall we say, about the need for collectors. And that's something I've touched on before. In America, there was a group of artists and the people used to laugh at. And there was one collector who actually said, hang on a second, I'm going to take a punt here. And that collector had a certain amount of clout. Yeah, okay. Certain amount of money. Yeah, okay, right, fine, and everything else. And that certain collector started promoting this work, pushing it forward. And that collector, of course, was Peggy Guggenheim. And of course, the icons from that movement, well, you don't need me to tell you who they were. Do we have anybody like Peggy Guggenheim in the bookbinding, book arts world? I don't think so. Do we have a champion? And it's something about what Richard said about, yeah, we don't need necessarily more creators. Perhaps we need more people that understand, more curators that are prepared to put the work forward, and more people that are open to collecting the book, more open to collecting the contemporary book arts, bookbinding, whatever it is. And this goes back to something, you know, in the UK, I'm pretty sure it's the same all over the world. People that do have the money, they like to show off that they've got a lot of money. So they'll buy a big painting, a big yacht, big car, big house, and everything else. And they'll invite people round to their big place, and they'll look at the big paintings and say, look at that big painting. Wow, look at that, must cost a lot. Now you look at a book, and it's on the shelf, and it's something that Kate was talking about as well. Look on the shelf, and all you see is the spine of the box of the book. But what's impressive about that? Nothing's impressive about that. It's not until you engage with this, and that is a singular sort of happening where you engage with it. It's a physical action. You actually have to physically engage with that work for it to come alive, for it to do what it does, the tactile quality of it and everything else. And you enter into this intellectual process of engaging with it. Whereas with a painting on a wall, or a big bloody vase in the middle of a bloody room on a bloody plinth, you can go, oh, look at that, that's big. That must have cost you a fortune. Yes, it did actually, yes. Whereas with a book, it is this singular thing. It's a triangular sort of thing happening. And I think that there is this element of book snobbishness. When I've seen this happen in a gallery, with exhibitions of books, where somebody comes in and they're looking at the book, and one particular person, I'm not going to mention who it was, just happened to be hanging around their book, as we all do. And this person said, well, you know, I'd love to know, you know, what it means. You know, what does the design mean? And this binder actually said, and I heard this, what do you mean you don't understand the design? At which point the shutters came down on that person. And that person literally just walked out. What the person was looking for was an explanation, was looking for the story, was looking for more information about that particular work, not the, what do you mean you don't understand? And sometimes we become so insular in that, you know, we expect everybody to understand what we're talking about. Now, that isn't the case. You know, when I first came to working with the book, I had no idea what a head cap was. I thought it was something that you used to stop you getting pregnant. And, you know, I just didn't understand. So sometimes we have to sort of de-language the language that we use in explaining what we're doing, and also explaining it to a wider audience, making it accessible, making it less snobbish and everything else. But I don't know. I mean, you know, that's from one maker's perspective. It's just one of those things. I mean, Richard, you've curated, you've put on exhibitions, you've produced work and everything else. How do you find it?
I find it mostly I find it online, because that's about the only way I can find anything these days. But I posted a couple of links there. I think that I don't think, but I've observed that most of the activity, there are a few people like Bob Rubin who built as individuals big book art collections that include, you know, bookbinding and all the other forms of book art, but it's primarily become institutional. That's why most of my customers are libraries, museum libraries, metropolitan museums. Watson Library is developing a very big artist book collection. That and it's really interesting to see. I posted some links to it's a Yale resource. There are better resources. I didn't find them at the moment. There are much longer resources of collections that have artist books. And I posted just what the Center for Book Arts has something like, I don't know, 5,000. It has a whole, there's, besides books about bookbinding and book art and all the printing technologies and bookbinding technologies and reference materials, it's got something like 3,000 works of book art. And it's all you can see them online. You can go there and see them in person. You can just say, "Oh, can you get this out?" And it's grown to the point there where it's there's like what do you call that, the shelving that moves in and out, expandable shelving, compact shelving units
with the wheel and
with the wheel that you crank it out because so that it doesn't occupy too much space, and you make an aisle where you need it. Cool. Well, it had to, because it's very limited space. But it's got all climate controlled protection for a book art collection.
I'm sorry, Richard, but I have to ask. Library collections having great amounts of books is not enough. Being able to order them is not enough. Just this year, I visited 2 collections, library collections in Russia. One has some 300 books, artist books, fine bindings, designer bindings. The other collection has over 500 books also. And okay, you can come to the library and order them and look at them, but this is not enough. You must interact with your public. You must engage your public. You must have exhibitions. You must have permanent collections. You must have books on display. Otherwise, only people like me will see it.
That's something we discussed quite a lot with our guests, our podcast guests from the UK, that many of the bookbinders who invited to our podcast have their fine bindings hosted by the collections of different libraries and museums, but they are not accessible. So you cannot just walk into the British Library or Victoria and Albert Museum or something like that and see fine binding, design binding, artist books like that. You have to order them. You have to, I don't know, go through the loop, jump through the hoops and loops and
I mean, for example, for the British Library, if you want to view a book, you've got to get
member?
The card. You've got to become a member. No, it takes a lot of time.
I think most importantly, you have to know about them. You have to know about them.
And the thing is that, I mean, I've got stuff in the BL and the VNA and Yale and all the rest of it. Yes, and the thing is that's fantastic.
NAL.
Sorry.
The NAL.
I think it's Yale, the Museum of
NAL, National Art Library at the VNA.
Yeah.
That's a remarkable collection.
It is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, it is absolutely stupendous, actually. The thing is that you've got to know how to go about getting access to it. The work is not on exhibition. It's sort of accessible, but it isn't. If you're just going in there and having a look, you can't actually go in and have a look at it. You've got to advance warning and all the rest of it and all sorts of things. Where there isn't, let's say, coming from a UK perspective, for example, where you can go to Tate Modern and you can walk in as a member of the public. You don't have to be a member. You pay your token fee, which is actually nothing, because that's what we do in the UK. You can actually walk into any gallery or museum and it's free. And you can view things that are there. The amount of times you actually see books on display is extraordinarily rare. The V&A in their main open collection has maybe 3 or 4 treasure bindings and that's it, nothing else. The British Library, okay, it's the British Library. They have many things sort of on display, but there's so much more they could do, but let's move away from the British Library. There aren't actually any galleries as such. There are private bookshops. There are bookshops that deal with, you know, contemporary bindings and not contemporary bindings, but, you know, limited edition works and that sort of thing. But there are no exhibition venues for the contemporary book in all of its genres, in all of its spheres and everything else. And that's a problem, because I can go to any gallery, any museum in the UK, and there will be ceramics, and there'll be watches, and there'll be this, and there'll be paintings, and there'll be all sorts of things, but no books. And not even, if you're lucky, one or two very historical examples of somebody's handwriting and whatever.
Or some medieval bindings.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and all of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, where's the modern stuff coming in? Where is it all happening? And the problem is, and it's something that Kate touched on, it's how do we view this? How do we get engagement with it? Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, I've got a mug. Okay, this one's made out of metal. It could be ceramic. It's used every day. Books are used every day and everything else. And yet a ceramic mug with a little bit of bling on it all of a sudden becomes an exhibition item. A book with a little bit of bling on it doesn't. And it's weird. The general public, from what I know, from my sphere, have this idea of the book as being something which is something else. And I have acquaintances who work in the city. You know, they earn a lot of money. They're quite happy to buy a new car every 2 years, have some big splash out painting on the wall, the biggest plasma TV screen that is imaginable to mankind, indoor swimming pool and everything else. And then you look around for the books and there are none.
And then there are people whose whole houses are filled with them and filled with book art. So there's,
indeed there is.
My experience is very different, I think. Can I do a screen share?
Yeah, I think this is one of I think you've actually hit a point, Richard, I think, is that it's difficult. It's the UK. I mean, I work in the UK. It's what I do. It's where I go and everything else.
It's where you are.
And yeah, exactly. And each country has its own sort of field of thought as far as the book is concerned. I mean, you know, if you go to certain areas, certain countries, you know, if you are a maker, you are all of a sudden elevated in society. If you are a teacher, you're elevated in society. It's almost the reverse of what it is in the UK. I mean, here, you know, if you're a maker, you're sort of down there somewhere.
Well, you may have to move here, you know.
If that would be impossible for me.
There are definitely some differences in the USSR. Well, I mean, in modern Russia, people still think that that Russia is the country that reads the most, or the most reading country, or something like that. There is this myth that USSR was the country where people read the most among all the countries, and many people in modern Russia still think that the situation is the same. Well, it's not, but
well, intelligentsia still reads a lot. Too much for my liking.
You read too much? I don't know. Can you read too much? Is that
okay? Can you see that?
That's a picture of a gallery.
Do you see it's a gallery? Do you see this?
Yeah.
We talked about this set. It's the one about the amendments, right?
Oh, well, there's that. I'm just showing you the gallery here. They've always got an exhibition on of something, but this is a gallery that specifically shows contemporary book arts. This is at Yale, and they have all these exhibit cases. I mean, that's all. I can unshare. I just wanted to, because there are just so many academic programs that have book art galleries now in cities across the country. I think a lot of what you're talking about is happening here. And, you know, I think I mean, you've just got your first London Center for Book Arts, and there's got to be like dozens of them here, you know, that are fairly
Could
developed.
you talk a bit about how it's funded? Because I assume it's not state funding.
No.
What's
It's not.
funded?
How the galleries that you've just shown are funded?
That gallery that's an academic institution. It's funded by the institution. It's a library. It's in a library.
How is that institution funded?
So it's basically endowments by rich people.
It's an endowment, and of course, you know, the way that there are the endowments, and then there's the tuitions, and then there's the fundraising. I mean, the fundraising never stops for an institution. You know, it's not just an endowment. It's income. Everything takes a continuity of income, but part of it is that what the exciting thing to me about that is that there are so many programs that are doing exhibitions around the country that are doing exactly what you say. They're bringing in people, they're advertising the exhibitions, they're showing contemporary book art and bookbinding. The Guild of Bookworkers puts on exhibitions, is constantly having traveling exhibitions that go from city to city. And it's all fine bookbinding and book art. And it's, you know, and it's in the last 20, 30 years, the Guild has gotten much younger and has expanded its concept of what it does from just traditional leather bookbinding with inlay and tooling to all kinds of book structures and content and the like. The Abecedarian Gallery I saw has a call for entries right now for a lettered and bound exhibition that is all book art that is calligraphically based, whether it's editions or unique works. I mean, there's so many. There's that 23 Sandy Gallery, and these things are in Oregon, they're in Texas, they're in all over America. There are these places now that are, whether they are institutional or private art galleries, there's many of those now, that are showing bookbinding, book art. And to me, it's a very growing thing, which is important in building a base of collectors, exposing people. And not all book art and not all bookbinding is expensive. I buy things, I haven't even opened it yet. I just got this one in the mail yesterday. Please Do Not Bend. You know, it's a Clifton Meadows' new book. I think it would cost me about $55, you know? You don't have to be rich to buy some of the best book art, you know, that's being produced. Some of it, I mean, you have to be rich to buy mine, you know, because, you know, I'm more the exception. You know, I've always tried to stay at the top of the pyramid in this field. But I started out as the only one in it, you know, and what I was defining. You know, there were other people doing book art. I know that's, you know, you don't have to say, what's he talking about? But, you know, what I'm saying is, I thought it always important to price my work outside what the market, for the most part, is in the field. So everybody else's work would look cheap, relatively.
Is this your advice to a young aspiring bookbinder?
Yeah, charge less than I do. Yeah. Then you can say, look at that Minsky's making. It costs 10 times what I'm doing, and mine is better. And you can get 10 of mine for the cost of one of his.
Could you perhaps highlight some young book artists in America? Who are you following? Who are you really excited by?
Oh, that's such a big question. You know, here, well, you know, there's an exhibition of, let me see if I can go back and find that right now. Just a second, I have to see how I can get there. Here, you know, whose work I really like is Colette Fu. You know Colette's work?
No.
Okay, let me, she's really interesting. And here, let me do that screen share again.
Oh, that is impressive.
Okay.
Wow.
Anyway, can you see it?
Yeah.
See, I can't see it because it's
yeah.
there. Oh, now I can move it. Okay. There we go. So, you know, her work is really exceptional. If you get a chance, let me see if I can see that this is hers also, you know, and she's Chinese American. She goes to China and photographs minority populations who still continue traditional lifestyles, and she makes pop-up books. Some of them, you talk about big books, she makes ones that are the size of a whole room that pop up, into like 10-foot, pop-up books. And so I think that's an example. So you asked for an example. There's an example of one, and we could talk. We could have a whole show of just like who are the exciting young. How do I stop this thing? Did I stop the screen share?
No.
Not yet.
Yeah. I still have to learn how to do this better. I'm old, I'm not. I'm old.
Well, we'll probably have to invite you more to our podcast.
With the theme, it's easier. It's easy if you tell me what you want to see, because there's so much stuff out there that it's really a question of curate. It's really like curating an exhibition. What you just asked me was, would I curate an exhibition? But that's the first one that just came to mind. I love Colette's work.
What I understand that there are definitely much more things going in the United States compared to
everywhere, not
only to the UK, but to Europe, in Holland, everywhere. But on the other thing is that we definitely do not have enough a good connection with Asian bookbinders and book artists, and I'm sure there is a lot of things going there, and that's something that I really want for iBookBinding and for our podcast and for our project in general to work on in the upcoming year in 2022, to invite more bookbinders and bookbinders and book artists and bookish people from Asia, from China, from Japan, from other countries. And
Hong Kong, Korea, where they have actually the large book art gatherings and symposia that people I know from here who go over to those, and it's when that world opens up again, I think it would be great for you to go the way you went to that book art fair
in Leiden,
that for you to go to the Asian fairs and do live presentations from there. I think that would be a great asset and a great thing for me to see. I want you to do it so I can watch it.
I really hope we will be able to do that. And iBookBinding is growing, and we are getting a bit more budget with every upcoming year. So probably there will be opportunity for that as well. And by the way, that's a good moment to invite our viewers, to check our Patreon link and to become our patrons. And down below in the description, and every dollar, pound, and euro counts and helps us to produce.
And yen and won, etc. Yen and won.
Everything. But if you can pay $10 per month or $20 per month, it's even better.
Or 1 Bitcoin a month would do it.
Yes, absolutely.
that would certainly do it.
That would help us quite a lot to cover different events all over the world.
Does Patreon take crypto?
Speaking of, we take anything. We can arrange that. Speaking of Bitcoin, Richard, what are the news around the NFT front? Because that part of our talk
right now is happening. It's right now the NFT world has converged on Art Basel Miami, and there are ongoing symposia run by different platforms. I posted a link to the Tezos platform, which is the one I like because it is not environmentally destructive crypto. It's unlike the proof of work ones that add huge amounts of carbon pollution to the atmosphere. It is a proof of stake system, which not only doesn't involve all of that pollution, it also keeps the cost of it. Instead of costing hundreds of dollars to mint something, you do it for pennies. And it's remarkable. I've been collecting art. I mean, on there, what's so interesting is in the platform I'm doing this on, most of the artists are also collectors, and artists trade work, and artists sell and buy each other's work, because some of the work is just so exciting, because it's so cheap to do it, that you now have people in Africa and South America and all over the world, places that never would afford to work on Ethereum-based NFT platforms. Now, from anywhere, just about anybody who has a computer. I mean, being able to afford a computer is still a limitation, but still, anybody who can get that far can go to their library and use a computer, and can now produce NFTs. And it's remarkable how different some of the work that you see coming out of places that were previously off limits. It's still basically white men in that field, but you see more and more women, people of colors, people of many colors now, who are breaking into that marketplace and producing not only digital work, but also work that is a combination of digital work. Speaking of digital work, I got a link that I'm going to send you, because it's just a friend of mine from Second Life, who I wrote about a lot in 2007 to 2009, when I was in the Second Life world, producing an art magazine about virtual art. The guy who is the best artist, David Spenceley, has just put up a thing at Art Basel. It's not an NFT, but I think you might enjoy, if I can find a link to it, going in there and here. Let me copy this link location and share it in the chat. I've tried it on my phone, and it's a great immersive installation. There you go. There's an immersive, and I told him it would make a great NFT. I said, I went there and I couldn't see, how do I get one? And he said, get one, because it's actually, you go online and you just jump in and you participate in it. But this is an immersive virtual world. And you use your keyboard, your mouse, your Zoom controls and everything. And you can go zoom way out, zoom way into incredible levels of detail, where there's all kinds of stuff going on in there. Mm-hmm. So that's just a toy for you to play with. That's a free toy, but he's presenting that at the at Art Basel Miami. So in terms of where art is going, I think a lot of it is going virtual. You can put on your VR headset and immerse yourself in that world. So it's, I think that I love I was doing computers before. I was programming an IBM 360 in machine language, strings of ones and zeros in 1964. So to me, on punch cards, and the fact that I can have in my pocket or somewhere something that is more powerful than the strongest computer that was around then. It was really
Sorry about that. I had a slight. Sorry, it's something to do with my armpit.
Richard, we lost the sound. Yeah.
I turned up the sound because the phone was ringing. I didn't want it to interrupt your.
But it wasn't your phone, I think.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to ask you.
Sorry, Pavel. Before you ask Mark, I wanted to return to one of your previous questions, and I don't really want to be a downer here, but somehow iBookBinding's podcast grew to this level where we have these issues, and we face the thing that people are living and dying, and there were at least a couple of bookbinders this year we wanted to talk to, and we didn't have a chance to do that. And Derek Hood was one of these bookbinders, and we discussed his style a bit with Kate Holland when we talked about their joint binding they made for Booker's Prize last year. And Jeff Clemens was another of these people who we really wanted to talk to, and we discussed with him being a guest on our podcast this year. And in the end, we didn't have a chance to do that, unfortunately. So that's something that's for me as a producer of iBookBinding's podcast is really sad and unfortunate thing. That's it appears that even while iBookBinding's podcast is so young, we started last year, and it's the source season, but it's iBookBinding's podcast is only a year and a half old, so it's strange math here. But still, there are already some guests we would never see on our podcast, and it's fortunate we had to talk to other people and other bookbinders and other book artists here, but at least some of them will never be our guests, and I just wanted to take this moment to acknowledge this and to.
I think I knew both Jeff and Derek, both fellows of Designer Bookbinders. Jeff, I first met a long time ago, and he was a sort of one of the gods when I was a student, and he was pushing stuff, and bookbinding was just part of his life. He's a very accomplished abstract artist in his own right, and he was very easy to talk with and very giving of his work and everything else. And with Derek, he came later on, I think, when I was a fellow, and his work is his work and everything else. And again, he came from music. He was a very accomplished drummer, working with a number of quite well-known groups and everything else. But I think this is one of the remarkable things about being able to make, about being able to create, is that as you're working, you are creating your legacy. You are writing your own epitaph with your work. And Jeff, for example, he inspired so many people during this time. He had written a book, which one of the places I do teach is actually on the shelf. And when you have that ability to inspire, and Derek as well, when a few years ago I was talking about designer bookbinding for ITR, which is a radio company in Era, Ireland, about the book of bindings. Derek's work was on show, and I think it was the first book of binding that Derek had done. And we are extraordinarily lucky in that as makers, our work lives beyond us, and it will continue to inspire, to engage with people, to have a resonance and all sorts of things. I was very lucky to know them. And of course, one's thoughts are with the families and that sort of thing. However, wow, what great people they were. I mean, when you look at their work and the skill level they had and what they were doing with the book, moving it forward, doing all these wonderful things. And yes, okay, not everybody liked what Jeff was doing, but his was up yours, this is what I'm doing. With Derek, very controlled, very precise, very accurate, attention to detail, which was something else. Quite opposite to the flamboyant nature of his drum work and the way he worked within the music and everything else. There was this counterbalance almost happening.
And a quite recognizable style of Derek's work.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, you look at it, you think, yeah, that's wow. So yes, I was very fortunate in knowing them. We learn from the shoulders we stand on. We move forward with what we do, with our knowledge of what has been and what is and what we hope will be. And, you know, they follow that great path. What can one say? It's not only that, we've all had friends and acquaintances who have passed away over the last couple of years. And a lot of mine work in the arts. Friends who have passed away have worked in the arts. And yes, they will be missed, but they won't be missed because they leave a legacy. They leave something for the future, which is the beauty about being a creator, being an artist, a designer, a maker. That's the beauty of it. You're not forgotten.
How do you connect with a person through his work? I mean, looking at Jeff's work, what, if you didn't know him, what would you have been able to say about him?
That's actually quite an interesting question, because when you look at the work, it depends what period you're looking at his work. Looking at the early stuff, the middle stuff, and the later stuff. I mean, it's like looking at, you know, dinosaurs, you know, when you go through the strata of, you know, all the fossils and everything else. I think what I would draw from it, and I first saw his work in 1980, which was before you were born. And not you, Richard, but, you know, some people. And what I would draw from it was this sense of space, of line and movement with his work, which was quite expressive. Also, the sculptured nature of the boards, the recesses, and a very extraordinary, powerful sense of simplicity with his work. When one compared it with the work of Smith, Lubet, etc., etc. And, you know, in 1980, when I was so many years old, you saw this, and I didn't actually equate it to the book. It's a long story, but basically, it was at the Usher Gallery, which is a gallery in Lincoln. It's a touring exhibition, and I was invited to the exhibition and whatever. When I saw the work, and this is before I went to art college and all sorts of stuff, and I was looking at it, and when some things stay in the mind, and it wasn't until sometime later, I mean, we're talking maybe 10, 12 years later, that I actually graduated from the college, Guildford College, learning bookbinding, bookbinding, restoration and conservation. And I'd entered that world, that I realized that what I'd seen 10 years earlier had actually sort of come around. This is what I mean about sowing the seed. It's what I mean about teaching, about, you know, kids, art school people and everything else. And I then met him when I was applying for my licenseship, because, you know, you have to go in to a room with all the fellows, and we're all stood there, they're going, hello, and you're going, yeah. And you present your work and you leave the room, and then they're looking at it and they're going, look at that. Dare I do. But what they're looking for is they're looking for potential. They're looking for that spark, that magic thing. And then you call back into the room, and when in my day, you had to sit on a chair, and then there was a circle around you of all the fellows. And you all ask questions, and you're crapping yourself, basically. Because these are the people that have been in the magazines that you emulate. They're and I use the word the elite, you know, they are where you want to be, you know, they are the Olympians of where you are, you know, and you're going, ooh. And they're asking you questions, and you say, I've got no idea what the question was you've asked me. I've got no idea. And then they ask you questions like, and how do you think you can improve? And you go, what, in everything? Yeah. And, and eventually, and then you're ushered out and you have to take your work out. And then the vote, and they say, is this person? Yeah. Like this. And then you're told in those days via letter, whether you're in or out or whatever. Fortunately, the idiots let me in. And there's actually a split vote, and the constitution had to change because of that. Same thing happened with my fellowship. That's another story.
So you made history even then.
Oh, crikey, yes. And it's one of these things. And so actually being in the same room as the people that you've seen in exhibition, sitting down with them, going to the pub with them and talking with them, and they're talking with you at the same level. They're engaging with you at the same level. There's none of this, you're down there and I'm up here. It's there is a parity. Everybody's the same. Once you get over that, my God, I'm talking with Philip Smith, or I'm talking with David Sellers, or Jeff Clemens is doing this and this and that, and you're going, this is unbelievable. And you have this accumulation of knowledge that you can tap into, you can ask questions, you can do all these other things. And Jeff was very accommodating, he was very straightforward. There was no ABS with him, which is art bull. It was, he was very, very, straight about it. He was absolutely fantastic. And the same with Derek as well. He was an extraordinarily giving person. There was no sort of mystique or snobbishness or anything about him. I believe he worked at Bainton's, which is sort of a trade bindery in the south of the UK, and he sort of worked and he did stuff. And you look at the work, it's superb, beautiful work. But he was a very level sort of, this is what I do. It's my work, it's my job. Bang, 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 bang. And again, he was very giving, and he would say, people say, how did you do that? And he would tell them. There was none of this, well, I can't tell you, I'd have to kill you if I told you. There was none of that. It was fun. It's great. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about not everybody, but the majority of people I know and have known, is that they want to pass on their skills, they want to pass on their knowledge and their experiences. And I think two shining examples of that are actually present and future tense are Derek and Jeff, because that's what they did. They were that sort of person.
Thank you so much for those memories.
Those, I have other memories of both of them. For example, there was it's okay. Another time, perhaps.
Well, actually, if you could be a bit surely over those many years,
we have to consider the families. Give it. They were both great people. They were both wonderful, wonderful company to be with. They will be missed, but their legacy lives.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mark. And I guess on this positive note,
that sounds great, doesn't it?
We should finish our holiday special.
That's a great note to finish on.
Podcast.
Because maybe we could ask our guests if they want to say something to our viewers. Maybe something we haven't talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing. Yeah.
That would be a nice thing to finish our podcast, because we've been talking for more than 2 hours now, and my bottle of wine is finished. So I guess
I'm empty.
That's
That goes with coffee. I see.
but anyway, definitely, Pavel, you are absolutely right. If Richard and Mark, you have something to say to our viewers, considering the upcoming year and 2021, 2022, and things to come, please share your wisdom.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's 2022 coming
Nice.
up. We're done with 2020. We're done with 2021. And we have another year in which to explore the unknown.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. I would only echo what Richard said, because to be quite frank, the last couple of years have been a bit diggy, to be honest. They haven't been the world's best. Let's look forward to the future. Let's get it out there. Let's get it on and do some stuff.
Yeah, let's do some stuff. Perfect. This was iBookBinding's podcast, holiday edition, and
indeed.
as
Cheers,
usual,
everybody.
As usual, cheers, everybody. Please check the links below. We'll post the links Richard shared with us, and we'll share some more links as well. Please consider becoming our patrons on Patreon, because your money or money of our patrons help us to edit the podcast. Without this money, we wouldn't be able to do that. So it's pretty important to us, and we cherish the support of our patrons quite a lot. Thanks a lot for staying with us for 2 hours or more, and see you next time. Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
Kwanzaa,
Be
what
safe.
else? Yeah, happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.